Hi everyone, Sandman here. Today's video is brought to you by a donation from FatCat, and here's what he has to say. Hi Sandman, I'm in my very late 20s with a 4-bedroom house, a decent car, money in the bank, and practically debt-free. I'm also used to women trying to use me. Sadly, it's not even by my own merits that I got my own assets. Just before my pre-teens, I had a traffic accident. I had been in a coma and part of my skull was removed because of a cerebral hemorrhage. I spent more time in the hospital for checkups and tests instead of school. Human interactions became more taxing and eventually led to severe migraines, and no medications helped. Even with the constant checkups and testing, it took me 3 years to figure out that my hearing problem was actually caused by this, and I had to limit myself. I felt disconnected and unable to keep up with reality. I had stopped playing athletic sports and had to quit chess tournaments altogether. I felt like I was actually not living anymore. Every time I got tested for something, it resulted in even more restrictions and limitations. I figured if there was a hell, this was it. Being killed would have been far more humane. Anyways, my current assets are just the result of a 10-year-long trial. I find that a person limiting their human behavior and contact is fine and is often considered admirable, but being forced into it leads to madness. Reading helps me deal with a lack of human contact before YouTube. At 18, I had 2 relationships. The first relationship ended when I was cheated on. She confessed on her own as part of a shit test, and the second one was ratted out by a mutual friend. My friends were generous enough to tell me because both of us were being cheated on. Today, however, I can't call myself a MGTOW because I'm in a 10-year relationship without any intent on leaving it at this point. My relationship is not romantic, but it is fun. Friends and family are at a loss at how we manage it. I found that keeping their opinion out of it works best. Make no mistakes, the female in this relationship is just like the rest. Also, hardly anyone knows this, but we nearly broke up at one point. This happened after I was forced to sit and talk about how impossible it was for me to find a good paying internship because of the financial crisis. It would have been a far better idea for me to quit school and basically get a job to keep the bills paying, she said. And I responded, if that's how you feel, I'm sorry, but I want to leave this relationship. This was harsh, but let's be reasonable. There would have been no way to end things well. A few years after that, I'd be hearing that it's all my fault. My fault for not finishing school, becoming financially ruined, and not being able to find a decent job and basically change. So I told her that it's better to end it now than play things out. But I was not willing to end the relationship over a stupid reason like money. I wanted you to know where I'm coming from. It's been 7 years since then, and now I've gotten to the point where I would actually like to start a family. But all things considered, this will most likely be it. MGTOW ideas are important to me. They keep my eyes open. As I said, this relationship is not based on love, but mutual benefit. It is also as close to love as it'll get. I don't mind sharing my life or being used, it's basically my nature. It shows me how to always keep an exit open. I know I can be on my own if I needed to be, and I don't want a marriage, but I wouldn't mind wearing a ring. At the moment, I'm looking at my own country's laws before I start anything. It's possible that I might not have kids if the game is too rigged. If possible, could you make a video saying that it's not wrong to use or be used by women? I find it more important to keep my own self-respect and dignity in doing so. It is my answer to the thirst. Finally, I'd like to tell you something that one of my male chess teachers told me. In chess, the queen is the mightiest piece on the chessboard. Its power makes it hard to sacrifice and harder to replace. She only holds value if she's able to serve her king. If not, it's time to see if the pawn can actually make it across. These words hold true in and out of the game. Thanks for the red pill, Sandman. Well, Fat Cat, thanks for your fat donation as well as your topic. You want me to discuss how to use women and how women can use us. First of all, it all sounds like this woman that you're with right now is using you for a paid-off place to stay, the status of having a decent vehicle, as well as having money in the bank. And I'm guessing that she's in her mid-20s as well. And yet when the going got tough about 7 years ago, she threatened to leave and you ended up showing her the door. You called her bluff and didn't go anywhere. It's really funny that you want me to find creative ways to use a creature whose very existence is to use men. Good luck with that. Women always seem to find a way to use a man more than the man uses the woman. I didn't read your entire comment, but it sounds like you actually have a lot of drama in your life, and that's really great now, but what happens in 10 to 15 years when there are cobwebs between her legs because she's not interested in sex anymore? What really worries me is that you received your money and your house from a settlement and it's difficult if not impossible for you to work. What if you marry her and you get divorced and she takes everything? You can literally find yourself homeless. I hope you're aware of this. And I would do whatever I can to protect myself if I were in your situation. With regards to using women, I've thought about moving to the province of Quebec and living common law with a woman and using her to start a family and living with her. I thought to myself, in the worst case scenario, I'd be basically stuck paying child support but no alimony and spousal support payments because the province of Quebec is still on the Napoleonic codes, and he created those to help men. He also legalized brothels to help us too. Yet history seems to think that this man was the first Antichrist. An Antichrist for trying to make men's lives easier, no doubt. Right now, Fat Cat, your beau gets a roof over her head, access to your resources, and what do you get besides sex? Sounds like you're just supporting a very expensive solo hooker living in your house. You say that you're using her, but she's basically using you more. And that's the thing that guys always have to remember. Women may suck at algebra and trigonometry, but they're good at the math when it comes to extracting resources from men. They know their energy return on energy investment, and it's usually pretty high. Her return is usually 2 or possibly even 3 to 1. She does a bit of cooking, cleaning, and sex and goes to work, and you provide a roof over her head and protection in your services as an emotional tampon. Did you ever stop and think that maybe those headaches that you're getting are possibly being caused by her? If a man thinks he's using a woman for sex, then there's usually more things that she's using him for that he's probably not even aware of. I would be all in favor of men and women trying to use each other in what amounts to a fair trade, but it's never a fair trade. The woman gets more benefits than she puts in. That's Briefeld's law. And the moment she's putting in more effort and energy into the relationship, she's either desperate and afraid to be alone because she thinks that she can't do better, or she's nagging you to death and then escalating it to shaming language to make life uncomfortable for you so you'll do what she wants. This is no way to live for a man. And for the amount of venting I emitted from your message, I think you're actually dealing with a woman that's nagging you. She certainly nagged you once the economy did poorly and there were job issues. Right now, because of the settlement money, she's probably not going to criticize you very much. But at some point, she's going to want a higher standard of living. It's quite possible that she's going to push you to do something more with your life, and the sex will start to disappear. Regardless of the idea that you're saying that you don't love her, I don't actually buy that for a second. No rational, sane man would be putting up with what you have to deal with unless he was in love. Of course, there could also be fear on your part that you'll end up single, alone, and lonely. I have to tell you though, being alone once you get into your 30s and beyond is not really all that bad a deal. On my typical day, I prepare food for about an hour, work for 6 to 7 hours, and I do all of that in peace and quiet, and there's very little stress for me. I don't have to worry about someone trying to use me for my stuff, and I'm not going to use anyone else. I'm coming at it from a place of peace and harmony. Even without MGTOW ideas, I don't think I could actually ever live with the woman ever again. The way I see it, she's either going to have really high standards in life and try to push me and demand more from me, or she's going to continue nagging. Or I'm actually going to have higher standards than her and she's going to sit there and ignore me. One party will always use the other far more. And in every situation I've seen, the woman ends up using the man more. So Fat Cat, you want me to tell everyone that it's okay for a woman to use a man. I think you're trying to get me to put a rubber stamp of approval on a nightmare that you call a life. I obviously don't know if it's actually a nightmare right now, but the entropy ensures that things break down eventually. So for you, the pain is ahead. Think of all of this as a little incident that you describe as a prelude for the next few decades of your life. And if you believe it won't be that way, then you're basically smoking your own belly button lint. Telling men it's okay to use women and telling women that it's okay to use men is just a form of bargaining. You're trying to justify the issues in your relationship and trying to convince everyone here that they shouldn't go their own way because there's a woman out there begging to be used. You're still young and idealistic. The relationship you're in sounds like the first adult relationship you've ever had, and those tend to become codependent and emotionally devastating. Remember that when you try and use a woman, she'll always get more utility from you than you get from her. That's just nature, and women do the math, and it ends up being in her favor. Perhaps I shouldn't actually call this video How to Use Women after all. It would actually be better if I called it How Women Use Men More Than Men Use Women. With regards to your girlfriend, she's willing to use you, even with your physical ailments. She doesn't care about the fact that you're a defective male utility. She thinks that by nagging you, she'll basically fix your ability to be a male utility and produce more resources. You're right that she's basically like any other woman. But then again, you're like any other man in his 20s seeking sex and female validation. I'm really glad to be over that particular stage in my life. And one day you'll get over it as well, and you'll probably look her in the eyes. Hopefully you won't be married to her, and she won't be entitled to half your stuff, and at that point you can release her like a prize bass into the muddy waters that you found her from. That's the way I see women these days. Be with her when she's young and she's in her early to mid-30s, then leave. Nothing crushes a woman's spirit as much as that, because it means that she could have actually spent her 20s finding a different man to be with and not you. You've essentially destroyed her life. Either that or you wait 5 to 10 years longer and she destroys your life later on. It sounds cruel to use a woman before she hits the wall and then dump her, but I've actually met plenty of guys that did this. One guy's doing this to the girl Sailor Spoon that I dated a few years ago. She's in her early 30s and she probably has maybe another 2 or 3 years before her looks fall apart completely, and she's with a guy that's renting an apartment for her, paying for her bus pass. He also bought her a cat and a bike. She's so happy trading sex for an apartment and stuff. But 2 years down the road he'll dump her, and she's too stupid to see it coming. She's getting the better deal right now, and she's getting a place to stay, and he's got stable sex, and he goes home every night and leaves the apartment because he can't stand her for the most part. When he dumps her, she's going to feel like the victim and think to herself that he took the best years of her life away, as well as any opportunity she had to invest in tricking a different male that was more gullible into willingly looking after her longer. She has no job or career prospects, so it's probably off to welfare land and social assistance land, and she's going to blame him for using her. Meanwhile, who's really using who? I wish I could pleasure a woman with my penis and get an apartment out of it, but I unfortunately was born with male privilege, so I'm out of luck. Anyways, that's all I've got to say for today. Remember to be careful, fat cat, or she'll cook you and eat you like pho at an unlicensed Chinese food restaurant. As for everyone else out there, please follow me on Twitter or like me on Facebook to get tomorrow's video today. Thanks for taking your daily dose of red pills. And remember, a red pill a day keeps the denial away. So enjoy the rest of your day, and cheers.